Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. I am Aisha from Peshawar Model School, Noshara campus. I am back to you again with the second lecture and second video of SVT for the month of June. Students, as this is video number 2, lecture number 2, so we are going to do the second half part of question number 1, that is the reading of unit number 4. Students, I hope that by now you are done with reading of unit number 3. That was the first half of question number 1 and got that difficult words in your SVT copies. I have told you in the previous videos that if you are having resources, then you can find out the meanings of that difficult words as well. Otherwise, the activity is only writing difficult words in your SVT copies as activity number 1. So you are going to do this as activity number 2, unit number 4, difficult words. Okay students, so we are going to cover the second half part, that is, as you can see through, is do reading of unit number 3 plus 4 and write down its difficult words in copies. So we are going to do the the last half part of question number 1, and that is reading of unit 4. So students, get ready to read unit number 4. So now I want you to take out your book, and on book take out page number as you can see students is 19. Take out page number 19, and on 19 you can see unit number 4, comprehension. As you can see, unit number 4, comprehension, and the name of unit number 4 is biscuits. Students, the topic of the chapter seems very interesting, and I think most of the students are very interested in such kind of topics. Biscuits, a favorite thing to eat, especially of the children and children at your age. I know you love to eat biscuits when you're at break in the canteen. You always buy different kind of biscuits. We have like chocolate chip and peanut butter, etc. in our canteen. These are all kind of biscuits that come in the canteen from the supermarkets and factories that we eat. So today we are going to talk about your favorite thing, that is biscuits. Most of the students are very fond of biscuits, of eating biscuits. They eat a lot of biscuits. Well, eating too much biscuits is also not good, but they love to eat biscuits because they are always sweet and they taste very good. So I think you will be very much interested in reading and knowing about the topic biscuits because you love to eat it. So students, today we are going to read about biscuits, that what actually you need to make biscuits. So then if you just grow up a little, then you can make your own biscuits if you learn how to make biscuits in this chapter. So in this chapter we are going to talk a little about the background and history of what was the condition and what was with the food back when people were in early ages, means long ago, what was there to provide food for the people. And plus we are going to talk about how to make biscuits. We are going to talk about the recipe and the ingredients of biscuits, so then you can make your own cookies and biscuits for yourself rather than taking help from other people. So you're going to learn how to make cookies in this chapter. Students, cookies is also biscuits. In British and America, people usually called cookies and use the word cookies for the biscuits. So cookies, whenever cookies come, it means they are talking about biscuits. Okay students, moving on toward the chapter, I'm going to explain the chapter through kind of mind map so that it won't take long and you'll get a clear idea of what is in the chapter. So students, the mind map is like this. As you can see through, chapter is unit number 4, biscuits. The chapter is about how to make biscuits in proper way. You know, most of the time you have seen that biscuits are not made in a proper way. So the purpose of the chapter is that next time when you make biscuit, you make sure that make it in a proper and right way. Okay students, so the chapter biscuits have 2 paragraphs, and in the first paragraph the history of how people would use to bring food into their home and what would they do. Would they go to the supermarkets or etc., things like that. So it is mentioned, a little kind of a brief history is mentioned of what people used to do back in early ages. and what people used to do long ago when there were no supermarkets. And then in the second paragraph, second half of the chapter, there is the recipe and right ingredients of how you can make proper biscuits, tasty biscuits is mentioned. The recipe, the very easy kind of recipe is mentioned in here. So that is why the name of the chapter is biscuits, because they have shown us from where we can learn how to make simple kind of biscuits. Okay student, I'll explain it through the mind map, and since there is no characters, so it is not a kind of a chapter, it is about the biscuits, so there is no such kind of characters that is specified in the chapter, plus there is no specific kind of setting that is mentioned in here. We can say long ago or early ages, or this kind of setting is the kind of place which is mentioned in the chapter, but that is not very specified, so we are not doing that. We are just moving directly towards the mind map. Students, but before moving to the mind map, you can just check out the picture, like a picture of a boy who is just making dough for making the biscuits. So I'll just show you the video in the end, through which you can learn clearly of how biscuits are made. So it is also, you just need to focus on that as well, so it is related to the chapter. And then there is a kind of a bakery in which a lot of cookies, biscuits are put it in a machine, in a kind of a machine, so they are just waiting for that to be like packed, etc., and the other man is taking packets. So this is today modern ages in which the factories are preparing biscuits on large scale, and they are just packing it and then sending it to us, and we are eating it, as I've mentioned in the early video, that we are eating chocolate chip and different kind of and different quality of biscuits. So it is the modern ages that people are doing that. Otherwise, long ago in the first chapter, we will learn that people would just love to make biscuits in their own home. So the mind map is going to be like that. The first point that I have mentioned and I have noted down for this chapter is, long ago people lived on farms and food was grown there. Means long ago people would live in places like villages, like today we live in cities for our own facilities, but there is no kind of farms, etc. So farms are usually in village, so mostly people would live in village in the farms, and the food would grow there in their own home, in their own farms. Milk, cream, butter and eggs all came from the farms. So milk, cream, butter all came from farms, because in farms there were like a lot of poultry, and there were a lot of animals, livestock, etc. So the food and these kind of things always come from farms, so they would come from farms. Then vegetables were grown on the land. People killed their own stock or go to fishing if they live nearby a sea. So vegetables were grown on the land, vegetables were grown, there were no markets. Long ago there were no supermarkets, no markets or grocery stores, etc. like we do today. So people would just grow their own vegetables in their own land. They have like big land. Even today the villagers have big land, and they grow and they farm in that land. They grow their own vegetables like onions, etc. So vegetables were grown on their own land, and then for if they need meat, so they would kill their own chicken and their own cow, goat, etc., and they would eat, or they will kill their own sheep and they would eat that meat, or they would go fishing if they live nearby a sea, or if there is a village that is nearby a sea, they would go fishing. There were no big supermarkets, as I mentioned earlier. There were no big supermarkets in early ages. There were no grocery stores. So what would they do? They would do this thing that the grocer would deliver most orders. So there were no big supermarkets. So what would the people do? The grocer would deliver most orders. Mean the grocers, like the farmers, etc., when they would grow vegetables, etc., on their land, so they would use some and then they would deliver most orders. People would order them, or mostly they would just wander around and walk around through the homes, and they would just say that if somebody wants vegetables, so whoever wanted would buy it. So it is also the same thing like in today, even in some villages today, mostly the grocers and people around the seller, walk in the village, and they make sounds like if we want tomatoes or something, and then if we want it, we buy it. So it was the same thing in the early ages, long ago. And they would bring, the grocer would deliver most orders, and everything was home cooked, The grocer would stock big bags of flour and flour and sugar and tea. So they would, whenever they would produce wheat and flour, etc., so they would deliver big orders, and they would just walk around in the homes and streets, and they would just call for if somebody wants that. So sugar, tea, etc., that grocer would deliver. Everything was home cooked. Bread, scones, etc. Biscuits were a real treat. Everything that people make was home cooked. Like today we bring bread, etc., from the supermarkets and from bakery, etc. But long ago people would make everything in home. Like everything was fresh. Unlike today, we buy things from markets, etc. Well, that is also fresh, but it is not as fresh as it was back in early ages. People would love, and people would make their own food in their own home. Like everything was home cooked, from bread, scones, apple tarts, each and everything was home cooked. Even in some countries today, like America, British, in UK, etc., people used to make their own stuff in home. Mostly they eat home cooked food. That's why they are healthy. Biscuits were a real treat, and biscuits or cookies, it was a real treat because they would just love to make it in home. So whenever there were biscuits, it means there was a real treat. When there was something special, they would make biscuits. So it was a kind of a real treat, and they would just love to eat it. So in the second half, the ingredients and recipe, as it is said that biscuits were a real treat. So now that they have also shown us the ingredients and the easy way to make biscuits, so we can enjoy that real treat too. So they have, in the second paragraph, as I have cut it down, they have said that biscuits are easy to make because there are just 4 ingredients. There are just 4 ingredients and the same amount of each one to make biscuits. So 4 ingredients and just the same amount, so it would be easy to memorize it, and you will just not forget it easily. So you should avoid mistakes, and you should follow the ingredients and in order to make biscuits. So the mistakes that people always do is that they do not leave the butter soften. They usually take out fresh butter from the refrigerator, so that is always hard. So that just affect the ingredients, and that affect the dough of that the biscuits that you make for it. So you need to leave butter soften out of fridge for some time to make biscuits. Make sure oven is at the correct temperature when the biscuits go in. So the oven should also be heated and should be in a correct temperature when the biscuits go in. Then the second thing that you need to do is that you don't need to forget about the biscuits, or they will burn. If you forget, and if you talk to your mother, or if you are just busy in a conversation, you just leave that behind. So the cookies are going to be burned. So take them out when they are nice golden color and give them 5 minutes. You need to give them 5 minutes after taking out of the oven to rest before taking off that biscuits to the tray, So you need to give them 5 minutes. You do not need to forget that biscuits, or it will burn, and you need to give them 5 minutes when they are nice golden brown. So you need to take them out and give them 5 minutes to rest when you are taking them off the tray, and then you can enjoy eating the biscuits. So the biscuits are going to be real tasty if you avoid all these mistakes, and if you mix that ingredients in the right way, because I told you that there are 4 ingredients, and the ingredients, if you check out in below the chapter, it is clearly mentioned in your book that the ingredients are real butter softened 100 gram castor sugar, raw sugar, 100 gram ground almonds if you want to add almonds, 100 gram self-raising flour. You need to make these 4 ingredients in the same amount, 100 grams, and then you need to make the oven at correct temperature, that is 190 degrees centigrade. It is mentioned in here. And then you need to grease a packing tray, means just spray some oil on it, and then it needs to be greasy so it won't stick to the surface of the tray, the dough that you made for the cookies. So it is very clearly mentioned right in the table, the ingredients, and then there are also instructions with it, which is mix butter and sugar, mix in ground almonds, mix in stiff flour, roll into small balls, place biscuits on tray, place cherries on biscuits, bake for about 12 minutes. That is also the instructions. That is very clear and easy, and it don't need any explanation, but I have just said what it needs. So these are the 4 ingredients in the same amount, 100 grams, and these are the instructions you need to follow. So then you can make really tasty cookies if you follow the instructions and avoid the mistakes that I have mentioned in the mind map, and that is in the second paragraph of the chapter. So the cookies are going to be shaped like this as is shown in the picture, and then you can make really nice cookies. Okay students, that was set for the video. Hope you've got what was in the chapter. The whole chapter was about biscuits and a little history of what people would do when there were no supermarkets and in early ages. Okay students, now it is your job to find out the difficult words meanings. I will show you some kind of words that I have just underlined for myself, and then you can underline the words that are difficult to you for yourself and write it in your copy. And please, if you can, then just write the meanings of that difficult words to help you a lot as well. Plus students, I am just showing you a small kind of video in which there is like a real practical way of how to make biscuits that would help you a lot in the chapter. So watch that in the end, and please make your activity as much creative as you can, because you have a lot of time. Students, as you can just see clearly that I have just underlined some of the difficult words: farmyard, grown, supermarkets, boat, recipe, etc. So you can underline same kind of word, and then you can just write activity number 2, or you can just write simply it in your copies, SVT copies, under the heading of unit number 4, difficult words. You can just write it like this. I have just shown you a small kind of method. Activity unit number 4, difficult words. Number 1, grown, 2, farmyard, and you can just write as much as you can, like 10 to 15 or something like that. You can make it creative, you can draw something on it, you can just do a lot of things with it to make it more creative. Students, that was set for the video. Meet you in the third lecture, question number 2 for SVT for the month of June. Till that, stay safe, stay home, take care of yourself and everybody around you.